In the aftermath of the October Revolution, the world trembled with change. The Russian Empire had crumbled, and from its ashes emerged a new battleground, a land torn between liberation and subjugation. What came was a fierce and defining struggle between the Ukrainian People's Republic and the Bolsheviks. The stakes were high: freedom or assimilation. For the Bolsheviks, it was a strategic move. For the Ukrainians, a fight for identity. The Ukrainian-Soviet War spanned from 1917 to 1921 and was a turbulent chapter in the fight for Ukrainian independence. The four-year conflict was divided into three intense phases. The first phase, between December 1917 to April 1918, included the revolutionary days, the attempted Bolshevik coups, the invasion of Ukraine by the Red Army formations, the signing of the Protectorate Treaty, and liberation from the Bolsheviks. The second phase, between December 1918 and December 1919, included the civil war in Ukraine, the full-scale invasion by the Red Army, the unification of Ukraine, the anti-Soviet peasant uprisings, the Denikin's volunteer army, and the Allied intervention, and the loss of West Ukraine to Poland. The final phase, between the spring of 1920 and the autumn of 1921, included the Polish-Soviet War, Treaty of Warsaw, the Russian Civil War between Bolshevik armies, and the armed forces of South Russia, the Ukrainian guerrilla operations, First and Second Winter campaigns, and finally, the government in exile. After the February Revolution of 1917, the countries within the Russian Republic like Armenia, Azerbaijan, Georgia, and Ukraine demanded national autonomy from Petrograd. In November 1917, the Ukrainian Central Rada sanctioned the transfer of state power in Ukraine to itself, and on November 20th, 1917, declared Ukraine the Ukrainian People's Republic as an autonomous part of the Russian Republic. The Kievan Bolsheviks, who fled to Kharkov, joined the Regional Congress of Soviets of the Donetsk-Kryvyi Rog Soviet Republic, declaring the first all-Ukrainian Congress of Soviets that announced the creation of the Ukrainian People's Republic of Soviets. On January 29, 1918, a small Ukrainian National Republic unit, commanded by Captain Ahapi Honcharenko, was sent to the front to participate in the Battle of Kruty, mainly consisting of the Student Battalion of Sich Riflemen, a Khmelnytsky Cadet School, and a Haydarmarka detachment, with around half of the 500 men killed. The Kiev Arsenal January Uprising, a Bolshevik-organized revolt, began on January 29, 1918, at the Kiev Arsenal factory. The uprising was suppressed by counter-revolutionary forces, resulting in the deaths of 300 Bolshevik workers and over 1,500 pro-Soviet workers. The Ukrainian government evacuated Kiev to avoid destruction, and the Bolsheviks began an offensive in Ukraine. However, the UNR signed the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk, receiving aid from German and Austro-Hungarian troops in exchange for food delivery to the Central Powers. Under Simon Petlura, the combined forces pushed the Bolsheviks out of right-bank Ukraine and retook Kiev on March 1st. German forces disbanded the Central Rada and installed the Hetman government in April. Ukrainian, German, and Austro-Hungarian armies continued to make gains, taking back left-bank Ukraine, Crimea, and the Donetsk Basin. In November 1918, the Directorate of Ukraine overthrew the Hetmanate with support from the Bolsheviks, while German forces remained neutral during the 2-week-long civil war. The Directorate re-established the Ukrainian People's Republic, and on January 22, 1919, neighboring Ukrainian republics united under the Act Zluky. On October 22, 1918, the Central Military Revolutionary Committee in Kursk formed 2 divisions under the army group the Ukrainian Front with 6,000 soldiers, 170 artillery guns, 427 machine guns, 15 military planes, and 6 armored trains. A meeting of the Ukrainian Chief of Staff in Kiev discussed border security and prepared for potential threats. The Chekhovsky government sent a delegation to Moscow to sign a preliminary peaceful agreement, but poor communication between the delegation and the Ukrainian People's Republic led to the mobilization of forces in support of the Soviet government. In January 1919, the Bolsheviks invaded Ukraine with an army led by Vladimir Antonov Ovseyenko, Joseph Stalin, and Volodymyr Zatonsky. The Directorate declared war against Russia on January 16th, after several preliminary ultimatums to the Russian SFSR Sovnarkom to withdraw their troops. The two main directions of the Bolsheviks' forces were to Kiev and Kharkiv. The Soviet forces advanced across northeastern Ukraine and occupied Rilsk and Novgorod-Siversky. On December 21st, the Ukrainian front took the important strategic railroad connection in Kupiansk. A full-scale advance started between the Dnieper and Oskil rivers. On January 3rd, the Red Army took Kharkiv, almost as it had done in February 1918. The Ukrainian forces consisted of two regular troop formations, the Zaporozhian Corps and the Sich Riflemen, as well as partisan detachments led by unreliable atamans, who occasionally sided with the Bolsheviks. On January 4th, the Bolsheviks' army group Ukrainian Front had reformed into the unified Ukrainian Front under the command of Antonov Ovseyenko, with his deputies Kotsiubinsky and Shadenko. On January 6, 1919, the government of Pyatakov officially declared the creation of the Ukrainian Socialist Soviet Republic. However, his government continued to stay in Kursk until January 24th. On January 12th, the troops under the command of Mykola Shores occupied Chernihiv, while other units under the command of Pavlo Dybenko took Lozova, Pavlohrad, Sinelnikova, and established contact with Nestor Makhno. After some discussion between the members of the Directory and other state officials, it was decided to declare war against Soviet Russia. In March 1919, the Soviet army took Poltava, while the Ukrainian troops retreated further to Kremenchuk. On February 2nd, they forced the Directorate to move to Vinnytsia, while troops of Shores and Bozhenko occupied Kiev 3 days later. From July 1919 to December 1919, the Red Army retaliated against the Ukrainian offensive, recapturing Proskurov on the 5th of July and putting the temporary capital, Kamyanets-Podilsky, under threat. However, Ukraine was strengthened by the arrival of General Yuri Tyutyunik and his experienced troops. The Ukrainian army launched a counterattack, pushing the Red Army back to Horodok. By October 1919, about 70% of the Directorate's troops and more than 90% of the Allied Ukrainian Galician Army fell to typhus. In November 1921, the last action of the UNR against the Soviets was the Second Winter Campaign, which aimed to incite a general uprising among Ukrainian peasants and unify partisan forces against the Bolsheviks in Ukraine. Two expeditionary forces were established, one from Podolia, about 400 men, and one from Volhynia, about 800 men. The Podolia group, led by Simon Petlura, captured Korosten and Leonivka before returning to Polish territory through Volhynia. However, they were intercepted by a Bolshevik cavalry force and routed in battle near Mali Minki. This marked the end of the Ukrainian-Soviet War, but partisan fighting continued until mid-1922. The Red Army terrorized the countryside in response. Local supporters of the Ukrainian People's Republic created anti-Russian and anti-Bolshevik rebellion states on occupied territories, fighting with Russians and collaborators until 1923. The end of the war resulted in the incorporation of most of Ukraine into the Ukrainian Soviet Socialist Republic, which became one of the founding members of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, USSR. Parts of Western Ukraine fell under the control of the Second Polish Republic, and the UNR government was forced into exile. Ukrainian nationalists continued to wage partisan guerrilla war on the Soviets, aided by Polish intelligence. The last active Ukrainian movements were mostly eradicated during the Holodomor, and the lack of Polish support for the Ukrainian cause led to growing resentment towards the Polish interwar state. Despite Ukraine's defeat and incorporation into the Soviet Union, the spirit of resistance endured as Ukrainian nationalists waged a guerrilla war against Soviet forces well into the 1920s, keeping the hope for independence alive. This enduring spirit is echoed today in the ongoing Russia-Ukraine conflict, where the Ukrainian people once again demonstrate their resilience and determination to defend their sovereignty and national identity. Don't forget to like and subscribe to watch more videos, and share your thoughts in the comments about the wars. Until next time, goodbye.